We decided that the digital shekel should work within a scheme. The Bank of Israel will of course be the owner of that scheme and will also be the operator of it one way or the other. And just like the Bank of Israel regulates any systemically important payment system in the market, the Bank of Israel will also regulate the digital shekel scheme. The scheme would also include PSPs. These are actually the likes of the access enablers that the team has showed earlier. So these could be institutions, not necessarily financial institutions, but institutions that will provide the digital shekel service to the end users. And the scheme must also include those, what we call FIs, funding institutions, mainly in Israel, currently the banks, but we hope that there will be more institutions down the road that will be holding customers' deposits. So they also need to be part of the scheme because they need to actually enable customers to fund and defund their digital shekel wallets against their bank accounts. We also decided that we think that funding and defunding should be mandated, okay? So your bank cannot, just like my bank cannot tell me you cannot exchange your deposit against cash, my bank must enable me to exchange my deposit against cash if I want to, or the other way around. Funding and defunding in the digital shekel scheme will also be something that banks will need to offer. On the cost structure, the decision that we made here is that first of all, the Bank of Israel will bear its own cost. So just like in cash, that we don't actually pass on the cost of minting the cash to the economy, the Bank of Israel will bear the cost of operating and establishing the digital shekel system. That does not mean that there will be no cost at all. However, we did decide that for individuals, that basic services should be free. So if I want to make a payment to Android, if I want to receive a payment, first of all, if I want to onboard the system, to make funding and defunding operations, these are kind of basic systems, basic operations that should be free for individuals. However, if the PSPs offer more advanced services, just like something we've seen in the demo before, then these could be charged against. And of course, businesses will also, well, not of course, but we think that businesses will be, PSPs will be allowed to fee the businesses for the service that they provide them. We think that intermediaries may be allowed to specialize. So let's assume that I'm an intermediary that I want to be a PSP serving the taxi drivers industry in Israel or whatever, okay? So I don't necessarily need to onboard any Israeli that wants to approach me. But that means that there may be a situation where there may be Israelis who are not actually onboarded by any PSP. Therefore, we think there should be some kind of a solution, some kind of an intermediary of last resort that will actually onboard any Israeli and provide at least the basic services. We are not yet decided who that would be and in what form, what would be the relation regarding that. On acceptance, we did some work asking ourselves, how do we ensure that the digital shekel would actually be accepted? So first of all, in that, we see a very important role for government payments. The government is the biggest merchant in the economy. In fact, all of us make and receive payments to one or another government entity within our, even within a month. So we think that actually at launch, the government should actually allow us Israelis to make and receive our payments to it with digital shekel, of course, if we want to. Not instead of other means of payment that we use with the government today. We believe that acceptance would be supported by advanced features, so not just the basic payments that we have today. I won't get into these, but I can talk about them for 3 hours, but there are all sorts of ideas of advanced payment features that could be done in CBDC systems. But at the same time, we also think that if I am digitally excluded because I cannot use a smartphone or something like that, that there should also be a solution for those people that are not able to access the digital shekel in the regular means of payment that we can think about. We believe that offline support will also be useful for acceptance because it will allow a more streamlined payment experience in cases where the system fails or something like that. And we've given a lot of thought to the issue of legal tender. This is actually complicated. I think our analysis has showed that the fact that the shekel is legal tender in Israel does not actually mean that if I approach a merchant now, the merchant must receive cash from me, okay? It does not mean that. So even if we decide that the digital shekel is legal tender, it will not actually mandate acceptance of it. However, we believe that maybe even declaratively, it is important that the public treats the digital shekel just like it treats the physical shekel, and therefore we do think that that definition of legal tender should apply there as well. Privacy is a very interesting and important topic. We did some work on that as well. And the first decision that we've made is that we believe that the level of privacy in the digital shekel should be somewhere between the complete anonymity that we have with cash. We cannot have that, but we cannot have, we do not necessarily need to have the full information situation that we have these days with the private digital means of payments. So that actually means that intermediaries will have less data or less permission to use the data than they have in the existing payment systems today. For example, we've given some thought to the issue of monetization of data, and we think that intermediaries will by default not be permitted to make economic use of the data unless there is a very clear consent and not just a click, 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 I agree, okay? A very clear consent process where I, as the end user, am willing to allow my intermediary to monetize my data. Most importantly, I think, the decision that we've made that the Bank of Israel will not have access to identifiable data. So similar to what we showed earlier in the demo, okay? So if I am making a payment to Daniel, the Bank of Israel will not know that Yoav has the digital shekels, it will not know that I made the payment to Daniel, okay? All that they will know is that someone in the system made the payment to someone else. Who will know the information? The PSPs in a manner similar to what they do today, and therefore, if there are the enforcement authorities in the economy, so like the tax authority, the AML authority, if they need to the information, there is no central place at the Bank of Israel that the tax authority can come and just read the information, and they will need to do it the same way that they do these days with the PSPs. Who should be the end users of the digital shekel? Who is it actually for? So first and foremost, of course, the Israelis, okay? The individuals, the organization. Organizations is a general word meaning businesses and all the others that we didn't think about, okay? So individuals, organizations, subject to KYC, okay? You need to be KYC'd if you want to onboard the digital shekel, but if you're an Israeli resident, you are entitled, okay? You have a right to use the digital shekel, of course, if you want to. And we'll speak in half a minute about what does it mean that you have the right. We did some thinking about the issue of kids. Kids can use cash, right? At any age, right? There's no limitation. If they're able to hold the coin, they're allowed to use it. Kids in Israel cannot use digital means of payment at any age. Okay, the age for opening a bank account is 14. The age for getting a card is currently 16, by the way. If you don't have a 15-year-old daughter who really wants to use a digital means of payment. And we think that the age for using the digital shekel, for having your own digital shekel wallet should be lower than that. We did not really put a number, but we think it should be lower than that. But more than that, we think that if I as a parent want to allow my 6-year-old, okay, to have some pocket money digitally, then I will be able to allow them some kind of access to a sub-wallet of my own, which I can monitor and which I can see what's going on there. Like, it's actually my funds, I'm responsible for them, but I can put aside some funds on my child's wallet, and they can then go to the supermarket or the store or pay something to the friends or whatever. Foreigners. We see no reason why foreigners, by general thinking, should not be able to use the digital shekel, assuming that there is a PSP in the system that is willing to serve them, to KYC them, to onboard them, and serve them. Okay, so you can think about, why would foreigners want to use the digital shekel? So I don't know, maybe there's a travel agency in Cyprus that works a lot with Israelis and wants to offer Israelis the possibility to pay with digital shekels. That makes sense. Maybe there's what we call in the team, maybe there's a cowboy in Idaho that has no affiliation to Israel whatsoever, but they want to use the digital shekel. If there's an Israeli PSP that's willing to serve them, to KYC them properly, so be it, okay? However, they do not have the right like the Israeli, okay? They're allowed, given that someone's willing to serve them, and maybe the difference here could actually be with the intermediary of last resort. So if I'm an Israeli, and for some reason no KYC wants to onboard me, it's not profitable for them, I can go to that intermediary of last resort. If I'm a cowboy from Idaho, okay, that's not an option for me. We do think about tourists though. The tourists should have actually some kind of a streamlined process, perhaps to KYC in more kind of relaxed terms. And for example, when they land at Ben Gurion Airport and something like that, they should be allowed to use the digital shekel in some relevance to the contents of their stay, until they leave, or I don't know, a week after they leave or something like that. Okay, so this is actually all about the design decisions that we've made. Oh, my timer has stopped. That's cool. Looks like I'm still at 12 minutes. I'm following with my phone and I see that I'm 2 minutes behind, so I'll try and speed this up. We did some work about the legal aspect, and we have been asking ourselves what would be the legislative changes that we may need to do if we actually want to issue a digital shekel. There's actually 3 parts to this. First of all, you need to make sure that the Bank of Israel has the authority to do this, so you need to make sure that this authority exists in the legislation. You need to think about what are the legal implications of the different characteristics that we will decide upon. So for example, if we decided that a child can use a digital shekel, we need to make sure that this is also okay with the legislation, and if not, maybe opt to make changes in the legislation. And we also need to apply existing legislation to the fact that we'll be issuing the digital shekel. So for example, if the law says that I'm not allowed to counterfeit banknotes, and if I do, I'll go to jail or whatever, you need to make sure that the same applies for, was that not too off legal, Michal? Just a description of our thinking. I'll say though that at this point, unlike the ECB, for example, we have no intention to initiate a legislative process. We'll just thinking of this and preparing for this at this point. So before I say thank you, I do want to say thank you actually to, first of all, my team, Amir, Moshe, Nir Yacobi,